And hello and welcome again. It is Friday one more time, and we are coming back to do episode 2 of Days of the USS Nimitz. I have with me my co host Adrian. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks, CR.
Good to have you back. We're also going to have Doc Z back. So before we do that, let's just briefly talk about what we're going to do today. And what we're doing is we're talking about what it was like to not only for Dan to be in the Navy as an individual, but when a spouse signs up for the Navy, so does the family. So this is kind of what I wanted to talk about and what the experience was like, not only for him while he was deployed, but for you as well on the home front. So let me go ahead and I'll bring him in.
Hello.
Doc Z, you there?
I'm here.
How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. So I was just recapping with our guests that we went over last week about your experiences by yourself on the Nimitz, and that we were going to talk today that when a single guy goes in, it's just his experience, but when a father goes in and signs up, the family serves as well. So we were going to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, indeed.
Hey, CR, we have some kind of feedback on your mic. Some kind of clicking.
I hear clicking.
Okay.
Not sure where it's
coming from. Not sure where it's coming from either. Let me.
There, now it went silent. Well, now I hear it again.
Well, we'll just forge on. I don't know what I can do about it. Yeah.
One thing I was wondering is, for people who are not familiar with your theme song that you're doing at the beginning, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So there's a movie out there called Final Countdown, not to be confused with the song that Europe did. But it was actually a what if movie. So basically what happens is the USS Nimitz goes through a time rip and actually goes back to a day before Pearl Harbor. And so that song was the theme song to that movie. And the Nimitz actually adopted it as her theme song. And Doc, can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. Anytime we did underway replenishments, we would play our song, and then whoever we were connected to would play their song, and then off they would go. It was just a little, hey, this is us. How you doing? And they're like, yep, this is us. See you later.
So the replenishment is what exactly?
Oh, unwrapped. So we carried a lot of jet fuel and supplies that the smaller craft that ran on jet fuel didn't always have. So from time to time, we would do unwraps, which is called underway replenishments.
So how did you transfer fuel?
Oh, they would shoot a line over to the other ship, and then they would pull back a line, the communication line, and they'd hook the two ships together. And then their computers would talk and get us on the same path, same distance, same speed. And then we could get a wire across or cable across. And then they'd slide that the jet fuel connection over to their ship, and then we would pump them some gas, basically.
Wow.
Actually sounds like it's coming from your end there, Doc. I've been tracing down my audio, and I think it might be coming from your side. But we'll just have to deal with it. It's not mission critical, but...
Yeah, I hear it too, so only when we're talking.
Right. Which I don't know. where that's coming from. So we were talking about unreps. The British actually call them RAS, replenishment at sea. Is that where you would play the theme song as well?
Right when we parted ways. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it was like
when they'd come up to us, we'd play ours, and then they would play theirs when they left.
so pretty much every ship had a theme song.
Oh yeah. This is the thing.
All right, so let's kind of go back a little bit in time to do a little bit of recap. So you graduated boot camp and then went into what they called A school, correct?
Yes, which was core school, just right across the road.
And it looks like this was from January 28th of 86.
Yeah, that was the day I graduated core school.
CR, if you have those Nikes now, if we would have saved them, would they be worse?
They could have.
But this was a big day for our family because we drove. You and I and your Aunt Karen drove from Lakeville to graduation at Great Lakes, and unfortunately, on the way, that was the day of the Spaceship Challenger disaster, and I remember that date clearly as we were listening to it on the radio. But it was tremendous because, as you can imagine, being the young family that they were, that we were, it was difficult to be apart, and
Right.
so it was a great thing to look forward to. Hi, Michelle. Thank you for logging on again. Anybody else, if you're out there, say hi and say your name and where you're from.
So, Adrian, I have a question for you. And so at that time, you had graduated from U of I Moscow as a teacher, correct?
Right.
So, and other people might know that on the Challenger was Krista McAuliffe, and she was actually a educator herself. She was actually going to be doing lessons from space. What were kind of your feelings towards that when you knew that they had that accident?
Well, it was devastating because we knew her class was watching, her parents were watching, her family was there. And, it was such an exciting time. And then to have that disaster, it was really devastating, really hard. Yeah.
So, Doc, so after A school and after graduation, then you got your orders to go to Bremerton. And then once you were there, you were at the hospital for 2 years. Well, let's talk about this picture here for a second. So who are those guys and why am I hanging out with them?
So these are my corpsman buddies. We all graduated on that day, and we were pretty stoked. We were all. The only thing about this is we've been together now for years. A year and a half through boot camp and then core school. We've been together, and then today we were all parting ways, going somewhere different.
So that's like high school in a sense, where you get that graduation and you have no idea where anybody's going. I mean, one guy could be going up to ADAC, one guy could be going to Rota, another guy could be going out to Subic Bay in the Philippines.
Yeah.
So then everybody got their orders and went off their separate way. And then we as a family got stationed up in Bremerton. Can you tell us a little bit about the drive out there? Did we drive out there? Did we fly out there? How did we get out to the post?
We drove out there.
Which was incredible because you think about driving from the Midwest all the way to the Seattle area and beyond. And I remember when we got there, people were out playing tennis and it was green. It looked like the tropics because we had just come from frozen lakes and the Minneapolis area. And I just remember thinking, oh, this is a wonderful post. It's just going to be marvelous.
So what were your impressions when you got on post first there, Dan?
Having all this, being in close contact with all of these people for the last, half a year to 3/4 of a year to a year, all of a sudden, boom, you have orders, and now you have to go across the country, and figure this thing out by yourself to get there, where to go, communicating
with
everybody have a cell phone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember having a little anxiety because we were just really totally on our own for the first time. So we were pretty young and had a young child. We were a year and a half.
Right.
And we didn't really know where were we going to end up in terms of housing or anything like that. And then this is a picture of our first housing. It was, for anyone who's been in Bremerton, Washington, this was old World War II housing. It's no longer there. And in '86, we went there. And we were grateful, don't get me wrong, to have a roof over our heads, but it had lead paint and old.
You kind of reminded me of going to some grandpa's house,
Mm-hmm.
Pretty austere, just the basics, everything painted white with heavy, thick paint.
Was it cinder block?
No, it was frame built. Mm-hmm. Didn't have a basement. But we had an upstairs with 2 bedrooms and a bathroom.
Right. Just typical military housing. Build them. Well, like you said, this was World War II housing. And I actually did some research on it. It was built for the shipwrights during World War II, and it was only meant to be lived in till the end of the war and then torn down.
Yeah, and it was a cute little place. I think we were there for about 9 months.
So after this housing, where did we go then?
Well, let's see.
I actually have a record of every place we lived. We went from military housing to an apartment that when my brother Greg came out, because he was in the Navy as well, we did get an apartment with him for just a short time period. And then after that, we had a little house. We had a couple little houses, and then eventually went back to a nicer military housing.
Okay. And how did the military do that? Was it just based on seniority and who they needed at the time?
I think married couples, families got precedent over single people. But there were dorms at the hospital. There were dorms there for the single people. Other than that, if you were married, you were either in married housing or you were on your own, you could do that yourself as well.
So they had BOQ and BEQ for just the single guys.
Yeah.
With the married housing at that time was the waiting list for the newer homes. And so when we first went out there, we put our names on that waiting list, and that's what we were waiting for. And by the time Dan went out to see, we had the nicer housing.
So let's talk about that for a little bit. So Dan, you were saying in the last show that when you were first aboard, you didn't go out to sea right away because that was at the time where they were bringing her back in to see if they needed to do a refuel on the rods. So you were in and out for a time. What was it like when you finally got your orders to go out on the deployment?
Well, I was working at the Naval Hospital in North Bremerton there, and I had started out on the surgical ward. They said, well, we're you were the class leader of core school, so you get your pick where do you want to go. They wanted me to go to ER or intensive care, and I'm like, well, why don't I just start on like surgical ward, and work from there. So I did surgical ward for about a year and a half, and then I went down to peds to see what that was like. They needed some help down there, and then I was going to go check out. They thought I could maybe go to Boston for optometry or something like that. And then they lost my paperwork, and I was sent to the Nimitz.
Okay. Losing your paperwork. I've actually heard of a couple of friends that were in that had their paperwork lost.
Yeah, I think
yeah, they wanted you to go somewhere, and they sent you to where they needed you.
Yeah, and when you sign up for it, that's the deal. You're not in charge.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was it like? So when you guys got married, you guys were in college together. You lived at the U of I together, and you lived together when you were in the Forest Service. So this was really the first time, I'm thinking, that you guys were apart for any specific period of time. Yeah. What was that like?
Well, I think to speak for me, it was okay, when you first went in the Nimitz. I don't know, Dan, could you try muting your mic just for a second? I'm going to see if that's it. Or can you mute his mic for a second?
I'll mute him and see if it's.
Yeah, it's from his mic somehow. And we'll unmute you. Don't worry, Doxy.
Yeah.
You're not permanently muted. I'll just tell you what it's like from my side. It was extremely difficult when he started going on the longer cruises, because they would, I think 3 months felt a little long. And then when he went on the 6-month cruise, that was really difficult. So I have, I have recently been diagnosed as being neurodiverse with attention deficit. And I think that in some ways that it made it difficult. And I know, Chris, you are okay with me saying you were neurodiverse with your issues as well. And
right.
What I found was really helpful, though, was that I worked at a school in Silverdale, Washington, where that really came around you and I, because you were going there in preschool. So it was really cool because I was able to go to work and bring, you were able to go with me and then get a bus on the way home or wherever we went for daycare. But it was difficult. I have a lot of respect for single parents. So, when I teach college, I have single parents in my class, and I just have so much. I'm in awe of what they're doing, when they're working and they're a single parent. But we did have some friends on base, and your Aunt Sue, my sister, came up. She was only a few hours away, and so she would come up and visit us on the weekends. So we had a lot to look forward that way. And I'll let Doc Z talk about his side.
All right, go ahead, Doc. What were your feelings as to being separated for that first time?
Yeah. I haven't been really separated from her, since we were married, basically. I have to work every day and home, that kind of thing. But, when you get aboard that ship, it's a tremendous responsibility. And there are a lot of things going on. And you kind of just buckle down and get with the program. But, then once everything's done, you're like, okay, I have some free time, a little free time. Am I going to go exercise? Am I going to go get a sauna? Am I going to write some letters? Am I going to, do my laundry, that kind of thing?
Right.
There's always something to do. It kind of, the more you have to do, it kind of keeps your mind busy. So you're not thinking, what did I do? I made a mistake. And, I've got another 2 years here.
Sure.
Well, and I think I remember you saying from the show last time that when you guys first set off underway for at least the first month, you really don't have time to think about home because you're getting into the role of what you're doing on ship. You've got so much to do.
Oh yeah, it's 12-hour days. There's no 8 hours and go home. It's at least 12-hour days, 12 to 16-hour days, and that keeps you busy, and then it makes you tired, and then you sleep well, and then you get up and you do it all over again.
Right.
And I think at the time you're just even though you're out of core school, now you're taking everything you learned and you're at, the higher level of Bloom's taxonomy and you're applying it. And so you're still at that level of like, I have this huge responsibility. Now I have my own patient load every day. And that had to be as exciting as challenging. And I think when we're immersed with that, at least from my experience, like teaching, it helps us in a way with difficulties. Did you find that at all?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear a lot of that.
I was just saying that, as busy as you were, it probably kept you going.
Yeah, so the duties keep you going. And then that, every day goes by is a day you're closer to home.
I think one of the things the Navy and the other branches do well is they have support for the families.
Yes.
I did take a lot of advantage of that with teaching, and I was pretty busy.
Yeah, I didn't really know anything about what kind of support was available. I kind of just got whisked off onto the ship and away I went. And I think we did right. I don't know if we were able to make phone calls at all. Do you remember phone calls?
Not around the ship, I don't recall that. When you want to deport somewhere, maybe. So we wrote a lot. And this is a picture of you receiving my letters and a picture of Christopher when you were in 6A doing duty.
Yeah.
So, Adrian, you were talking about family support for the ones deployed, and basically those groups were called. The military is full of acronyms, so it's an acronym FRG, which stands for Family Readiness Group. Um, and each branch seems to have one that's a little bit different. Um, and so the one in the Navy is called the um, Navy Fleet and Family Support Program. And basically, what they do is they take care of um, if there's problems at home, they try to help solve that issue that's going on. They have people that on the home front can help with issues. And there's I found a couple of different places that if anybody's listening that is active duty or needs someone to listen to, there is a nationwide one to get a hold of, and that is www.militaryonesource.mil. And that's kind of a blanket cover for everybody, for all the branches. And the other one is for service people that are in Minnesota, and it's the Minnesota Military Family Foundation. And they have a phone number of 763-544-2255. And I just want to let people know that you're not in this by yourself. You're not in this alone. You have other people. You're in the military. You're in a huge family. There's people out there that will help. And basically what the FRG is it's a group of individuals that are usually women that are still home. Usually it is comprised of women of the husbands that are deployed. Usually it's led by the base commander or division commander's wife. Mm-hmm. And basically they're there to help out. If you need help getting groceries, or you're new to post and you don't know where to go to, like the store, on base PX, or get certain things, they can help with that. Or in the case of in the movie We Were Soldiers, basically what happened is one of the wives was home one day and the taxi driver dropped off a telegram. And it was commonplace at that time for the taxi drivers to deliver those notes of "we regret to inform you" situations. So at that time on post, the FRG took over delivering those notes. And I want people, like I said, I want people to know that they're not in this by themselves. They're in this with family members. And if you're in a situation and you need help, please reach out. Doesn't matter, you could be home, or it could be the sailor or the deployed person. Reach out to your commander, reach out to your direct supervisor, go to the chaplain if you have to help out. And the military is there to help. So with saying that, I just kind of wanted to get that out of the way, but let's go ahead and jump back in. So Dan got deployed. So that leaves you and me home, correct, Adrian?
Yeah, we were, like I said, the shorter cruise were 3 months at a time. The longest cruise was 6 months at a time. And so they'd go out and then come back in. But yes, and we did have the school that I taught at, and the school that you went to for preschool. And there were people that really wrapped their arms around us. There was, I remember, a librarian who took you under her wing and got you some books about your dad being in the Navy. And it was just, there was so many beautiful things that people did like that. But I like what you said, Sierra, about asking for help. And neither Doxy or I were ones that grew up and knew how to ask for help. And so, it's important when you need help to ask for help. Yeah, definitely. And Dan, Duxie was my rock. He was there, and he was so good with you and good with me that it was really hard when he was gone.
Right. So one thing I can remember, and I don't remember when in the deployment, but I do remember, I think it might have been around Christmas, because I remember opening up a Christmas present and this was in it. But what it was is it was, if people remember, tape decks and tape cassettes, it was a tape cassette, didn't have any band on it, but when we played it, put it in and played it, it was Dad singing. And the song that I remember was Somewhere Out There, and that was from Fievel Goes West. Doc Z, can you kind of talk to that? And how did that come about? Would you normally send tapings home, or was that something you were trying that was different?
No, quite a few of the guys sent tapes home. It turned out to be a good way to for the person, your family, to actually hear your voice rather than read it on a piece of paper. And and it worked out well. I would go in the sound booth for the audiology, which was nice and quiet in there. And I could, send you messages and talk to you and sing. We both liked that. I still remember that song from Fievel Goes West.
Well, and that's one of those things, like my wife and I have been married for 10 years now. And that was one thing that really stuck to me at our wedding is they actually, when my mom and I danced at the wedding, they played that song. And, every time I hear that song, I think of being out west. Just like another one that I remember is after you came out of the Navy, we still lived in Silverdale, and you had that tape of the Windham Hill guitar sampler. And every time I hear that, it brings me back.
Yeah.
So what was it like? At that time, I was probably three and a half, 4. So I was in kindergarten. So there probably wasn't a lot of, dual parenting doing with like schoolwork and all that. So how was that all done? I mean, obviously mom was the only one home, but I'm sure you would share with him how I was doing from week to week and all that.
Yeah, and you were really in preschool still, so you were, around 3 or 4. And so, it was he would miss some, probably milestones, and so we wrote every day, and it was important to put those things in letters about how you were developing, or, I always loved the language development at that age as well. And so I can remember one time your Aunt Sue and I and you went for a drive, and we were talking about your dad, and we said, yeah, he's such a character. And you thought we had said something bad. You were like, my dad is not a character. So you were fiercely loyal, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
And we still laugh about that once in a while.
So, and I'm sure that there were other guys on the ship that had young families at the time. How was that all gone about? I mean, when you guys had mail call, did you guys get together and share, messages and pictures?
Yeah, we wake up in the morning and we get dressed and go down to mess hall, and then we'd kind of come back to the department, kind of hang out a bit until we got what was gonna what all the things were going on of the day. We'd have a little morning meeting, and they pass out mail, and we'd have a little bit of time to read mail and talk with each other about their families and whatnot before we had to hit the deck running.
Mm. And this was in, let me recap. This was in 1988. So the only inkling of the internet was military, but you guys didn't get to use it. The internet was only used for military purposes, and it was top secret. So at that time, it was all snail mail. So I'm sure, it would take a while. So I'm probably sure that by the time you got a letter or they received a letter home, it had been probably, 4 or 5 days.
Well, that brings up a good point. Like, Doxy, like, how did you get letters? Did you have planes that came in, or how often did they come in?
Yep, the cod came in just about every day.
Every day. Okay.
Yeah, all the parts, we need supplies, people come and go. So it was a sort of daily thing.
Wow.
And another thing I can remember too, so these pictures here are from 88 as well. And these look like, so you were either leaving out on deployment or coming back from deployment. You guys would stop in Pearl Harbor, I assume?
Yeah, I think we were just out doing some training. We did a lot of training, and like I said, they did a lot of upgrading to the ship, and we would take it out. A lot of times we'd take it out and we'd go south down to San Diego and out there doing war games and shakedown crews and all of that. And I think that we were just gearing up to go somewhere really far away, like the Indian Ocean. And it was really neat that we were able to have that week in Hawaii. The ship was there, and I just thought it was fantastic to have an entire week off. We had a hotel at the Halikoa on Waikiki Beach. We rented a car, went up over the island, went to the Dole Plantation, out to Hanama Bay, and did some snorkeling. It was phenomenal.
So what was it like? I'm sure you were probably a buff of history when you were in school. What was your personal experience like pulling into Pearl Harbor, knowing what happened on that December morning in 1941?
Yeah, I mean, it's a historic place. There are not, rows and rows and rows of ships out there anymore. But, out of all the islands, I'm glad that I got to go there.
Mm-hmm. What was it like pulling into Pearl? Did you guys come like right past the Arizona at all?
Oh yeah, we had prepared for that for some time. We dressed in our dress whites and we manned the rails, rendered salute as we passed by her, and then pulled into port, and then we were excused to go down below decks and get changed.
Mm-hmm. So when you guys pull into port, was there an import uniform, or would you just switch into civilian clothing? How would that work?
No, from our dungarees, somebody was always up top rendering honors, and then you had to be in dress, whatever the dress for the time of year it was. That's what you wore. Yeah. Sometimes I was busy, and then they'd say, "Hey, do you want to go up and man the rails?" I'm like, I got this pile of paperwork to do here. I got to get caught up before we start it all over again the next day.
So, Adrian, what was it like getting a trip to Hawaii? I'm kind of jealous because that's one place that I want to go. What was it like? Like, how did you guys plan it? How did you get out there? How did you meet him?
There was a Navy wives club that contacted me, and they had done all of the arrangements to the flights, and we all flew out there together. So it was really a blast, and I really felt that was a tremendous opportunity. And we met the Nimitz as it came in. So we were there when they were manning the rails and when they came in. And something I had not told your dad was that I decided to surprise him and dye my hair blonde. And my hair has always been pretty dark. And so we went through a lot of Lucille Ball like Lucille Ball dyes her hair, from pitch black to blonde. And so what happened is when we were over there, we ended up snorkeling quite a bit, like in Hunama Bay, and my hair started turning these really weird colors. Like eventually it was green during, like, in the middle of the trip. So it was just awful.
Jeez.
So what I did was I just got a dye, and I dyed it back in the middle of the trip. So I have no idea what people thought, but we still laugh about that. It was funny.
So the week's over. So then you fly back home. Dad, you get back on the Nimitz. You guys shift colors and come back out of Pearl, and I suppose go on the rest of the deployment. So I'm looking right about now. I'm going to do a little time check. I think we're getting there, but kind of want to do a segue. Yeah, so we've got about 17 minutes left. So let's kind of segue into this, and it is, so you leave out of port, Nimitz ships colors, you go onto your deployment. How was the rest of the deployment, and how did the deployment for you end? I kind of wanted to touch base in this situation because I know that Mom ended up kind of having some medical issues, and you did separate from the Navy early on a hard ship. So can we just touch base on that a little bit?
Do you want me to talk a little bit first? Dan's like, yeah, please talk. Yeah, please do. So yes, I was having these, what they call intractable migraine headaches, and they were going on for days, and they were like an 8 out of 10 pain level. You have the aura, you can't stand bright lights. One day I went into school to teach, and they had to call the ambulance because my vision had gone almost down to nothing. And it ended up being a really, really bad migraine, but my doctor wanted me admitted because they were having such a hard time controlling them on an outpatient basis. And, what happened is that you and I and Dad were out on the West Coast. And so it wasn't like we were by my family in Idaho, who could have cared for me, but they couldn't leave their lives and their kids.
Well, and it's, from Coeur d'Alene out to Seattle's, what, about a 8.5, 9-hour drive?
Yeah, maybe a little less, but yeah, that's about right. Yeah, because we're in Bremerton, we're not just in Seattle. So yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
And that was difficult. And at that time, I was in the hospital, and it's a little hard to talk about, but another Navy wife came in and really read me the riot act for requesting that my husband could come and help me. And it was seen as I wasn't supported. I was seen as
Kind of a pariah at that time.
cowardly wife. And that
Mhm.
was really hard because I was really trying my best.
Mhm.
But I couldn't help it. And she'd say things like, well, you don't have a brain tumor. You know, what's wrong with you? And I finally just asked her to leave. And I did call the commander's wife, and she was very supportive.
Mhm.
And I think it was probably just a bad apple. But
Right.
I can remember that feeling of being intimidated
Mhm.
because I wasn't used to asking for help anyway. And so I had this horrible, it kind of felt like a shame spiral, like, okay, here we go.
Well,
But
and at that time, it's nothing is more worth than your health. And I think you guys were wise in making the decision of doing that, because this is really nobody else to help. And so Dan, at that point, when you guys made the decision to have you come home, you were at the end, you were coming up on the end of your 4-year stint in the Navy anyway. So just we've got probably about 10 minutes. So go ahead and tell us what it was like coming home. What was your journey like? How did you get off the ship? How did you come home?
Okay. Well, I had been apprised of the communications back and forth between Mom and the base commander or whoever was in charge of that. We went around all the way into the Indian Ocean, and then we ended up on Diego Garcia, the rock, and we got off there. We all had leave for, I guess they were going to have leave for at least maybe a week. But I was there for about two nights, 3 days, and then they said, "All right, well, we're gonna send you home." So I got on an S3 Viking, and I flew off. It took me 5 days island hopping, catching flights, wherever we could catch flights, all the way back to Washington State. So
you got to fly off of one of the shortest runways in the world. Tell me what that was like.
It was interesting. The pilot, like I said, we were in an S3 Viking Sub Hunter, and it was really interesting. Tight quarters. These guys were funny. I mean, they were like yucking it up the whole way, and then they'd like shake the plane back and forth, and you'd go, "Oh, a little turbulence there," and then you'd go, "You know what? Since we're doing this, we're a little low in our left tank, and we have a little bit more in the right tank." He goes, "So we could just flip the switch and pump it in there." He goes, "So what we're going to do is we're just going to tip the plane on the side for a while and let gravity do its job." And he kept talking and talking. He goes, "All right, I'm going to return you to your upright position now." And he was a hoot. And then he was pointing out stuff, that we were flying over. And then I forget where we ended up. Guam, Philippines, just island hopping all the way back. Oh, and in Hawaii. And then and it was just all on military bases. And it was, you get out, you grab your bags, you run over to that plane, and you get in that plane, and they make sure that who you say you are, and then you go get a seat. And this isn't like commercial flights. This is like you're in a great big C4 transport plane. Mm-hmm. It's cold. Yep. And you got your sea bag, and all of the clothes that were in your trunk are now on your purses or
on your back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like some of those flights, like that C4 from Guam to Subic, it was stinking cold. I mean, there was frost coming out when you were breathing. So.
Oh, you're talking about the C5 Galaxy, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Taking off from the deck. That's how these are. Just taking off of the deck.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, these are just runways. So
Yeah. But when you took that catch shot in that S3 Viking, I mean, that's 0 to 100 in what, couple seconds?
oh yeah, that was serious fun. Yep. And the guy, the cat, and that guy was a hoot too. He's like, go ahead and put your hands up by your shoulders and see how long you can keep them there. And he kind of chuckles because he knows that as soon as we hit the catch shot, everything goes boom back and you can't move. Yeah, it was interesting.
Well, we all know that those flyboys have an attitude anyway.
Yeah.
So when you came back home to Bremerton, I can remember. I remember the day you came home because I was in preschool at, I think it was a Halloween party.
Yeah.
I know we have the picture. I know we couldn't find it tonight, but I think I was dressed up as a mouse, and
Yes.
Mom and Dad actually surprised me by bringing him into the party that day. And I remember I was really happy to have him home. So how long after you got out, how long did we stay in, well, we were in Bremerton, so then you got out, then we had to find a place, and we moved here in 1990. So how long from the time you got out to the time we moved?
Well, once I got back, we had to find alternative housing, and I think that's when we ended up at Danwood Lane, the apartments.
Okay.
Yeah, we were there for a year and a month.
Mhm.
I wasn't out. I still had to go down and work at the base naval hospital, not the naval hospital, the base clinic.
Mhm.
Okay.
USS.
Yep.
To do that for quite a while.
And then I suppose there's probably a transition time. We'll call it that. Transition time from coming off the ship to, like you said, your orders don't get cut right away. So you come off the ship, they find you TDY at the clinic, and then I'm sure once get your papers, they don't just cut you out of the military right away. They actually put you into the reserve for a while, and then I think you end up going into the inactive reserve. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, basically that was it. I just kind of had to not do anything bad and kind of hang around, and then till they said, okay, you're done, you can go.
And that had to be kind of a hard time, because at that time you're a short timer, and I know a lot of guys that are still in, that are re-upped, don't really look at short timers as a good thing. But I'm sure you probably couldn't wait to get out and spend time with your family.
Well, I mean, I was prepared to do the whole thing. What I signed up for, I was prepared to do. And then life happens.
Right.
And family's the most important thing.
Yep. Well, we're coming down to the end of it, and I think, thank you for coming on for these 2 nights. I think what we should do at some point is I would like to have you back on again to talk about your time in the U.S. Forest Service as a ranger and also a helitac firefighter. I think that would be good. We can get you on the schedule for some time. But I just wanted to thank you for coming on these last 2 nights, and I wanted to thank you for your service. And before we let you go, I just wanted to say Bravo Zulu.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate all of the support. It's been a while ago, but talking about it tonight just brings it right back.
Well, thank you for gracing our show, and have a good night, Doc. All right, so that kind of brings us to the segue of the show, where we can talk a little bit about what we're going to do next week. Or actually, we have a bonus show this week, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. And I can remember growing up, living here in the house. Mom and Dad and I used to listen to Art Bell. And for those of you who don't know, Art Bell talked about paranormal, UFOs, Bigfoots, whatever. And he was on in the 90s and 2000s and always had Coast to Coast with Art Bell. So I started listening to him, and then after he passed away, ended up listening to the show. And I actually, on Wednesday, we get to talk to one of my role models, Darkness Dave Schrader. He agreed to come on the show Wednesday at 7:00, and we are going to talk to him about how he got into paranormal and kind of what he does for investigations. We don't want to load him up too much with questions. We do have him here for an hour, but I'm kind of, get to schoolgirl a little bit and talk to Dave Schrader. I'm sure you might have a question or two for him too, Adrian.
I think I do. Yes. As a pretty conservative Christian, and you always know when you're listening to Art Bell, I'd be like, you don't always need to listen to that stuff. So yeah, it kind of come a little bit from that perspective, but I'm super excited you got him on the show. He's a very nice person, and very nice of him to agree to come on and talk to us. So I won't be hard on him at all, because I think he is a Christian as well.
Yes, he is.
Comes from a similar perspective, worldview.
Yep. And I just wanted to tell my listeners, yes, we do talk about the paranormal from time to time. We won't be talking about the paranormal every single showtime, but we do have, I think, our next two shows. Yeah, so Wednesday and next Friday are going to be on the paranormal subject. So look forward to Wednesday at 7 p.m. CST to have Darkness Dave Schrader. And then next Friday at 7 p.m. CST, we are going to have Michelle Lancel, which is a good friend of mine. We graduated high school together. And the title of that show is going to be Demons in My Apartment. And it's going to be her experience on ridding an apartment that she lived in that may have had a couple of dark things in there. So, like I said, we won't always talk about the dark things, but we try to keep this channel live. So we're coming up. Any final things you wanted to say tonight, Adrian?
No, I'm just super excited and grateful that Doc Z came on tonight, and I think that's a wrap.
Yep, I think so too. So tune in again on Wednesday night, 7 p.m. CST, to listen to us talk to Darkness Dave Schrader. Thank you for tuning in tonight, and I want you guys to have a wonderful and blessed weekend. Have a great night, everybody.
Good night.